So Jeff's gives a high-level summary of some of the key things that have changed since the last time we met. Today I just want to go into a little bit more detail around a few topics. Performance and metrics. Jeff mentioned our performance. Again, I'm going to focus on a few key areas of that and share a few more details with you. I also want to provide you with an update in terms of market share, ICP activity within some of those market shares as well, and we'll delve a little deeper into there and give you some more information. I'm also going to give you an update in terms of our ICE actions for last year and ones that we completed, and our ICE actions for 2017-18 as well, so you can see the kind of work that we have planned in terms of improving our service to ICPs. I also then want to give you a reminder about adoption prerequisites and the type of things that must be in place before we're connecting assets or adopting assets from you. Okay, back to Jeff's point in terms of we just want to make sure that we're adopting quality assets from you. Okay, so please as I move through this, just shout up if you do have any questions or need to stop me at any point to clarify anything. So first slide, don't worry about that, I'm conscious a lot of you won't be able to see that. I'm going to focus in on some key areas. For the ones who can see it, would anybody like to have a guess in terms of how many POC quotations we've issued here today? It is on there for those who've got better eyesight. Anyone want to take a guess? Anything, roughly, start it off?
Two.
Two?
I'm way off.
Way off. Anybody else? Any more on 2?
1,000.
Guys got good eyesight. 1,108 POC quotations here today. Now that is just where you as an ICP or anybody, potentially doesn't have to be an ICP, applies to us for Northern Powergrid to basically assess the point of connection and give you a non-contestable quotation. Alright, so that's year to date so far. What that doesn't include, and these metrics don't include, is all the work that some of you in this room do in terms of self-service, so your metered connections that are all done. These are not included in these figures, okay?
How's that compared to last year?
Compared to last year, I'll touch that in a little bit more detail. Last year we did around about 2,600 POC quotations and design approval requests. This year I'm forecasting to be just under 3,000 or just over 3,000. Okay, and like I said, I'll share some of those increases with you as well. So, on average, basically means 50.4 requests per week for SLC 15 quotations. So as Jeff mentioned, in terms of our performance against there, you can see the type of volumes that we're talking about, and as I just said there, forecasting 3,000 requests for SLC 15 quotations in 2017. So in terms of timescales for those quotations, most of you will hopefully be familiar with them. The lowest POC quotation with SLC is 15 working days. The highest being 65 working days for EHV connections. On average at the moment, 12 working days is our average to issue a quotation. That's if you look at the volume of activity tends to be in the HV demand market segment or LV. So EHV connections obviously, there's less of those, so that does affect the average. So that's why it is a 12 working day average at the moment. So good performance in terms of that. Design approvals, 224 design approvals year to date. Sorry, I'll just go back on. So 224 design approvals, that's where you as an ICP have asked Northern Powergrid to approve your design. That does not include self-approved designs, which a number in the room are now doing. Okay. So despite that volume has still increased. So despite ICPs having the ability to self-approve, we're still seeing an increase in Northern Powergrid continuing to approve those designs, as well as some ICPs dipping the toe into that water. So that just gives us an average of 6.1 working days for approved design approval. Again, for those of you who are familiar with SLC 15, you have 10 working days for an LV or HV design approval, or 20 working days for an EHV design approval. So our average across all that is 6.1 working days. Okay. Any questions on that? Everyone okay with that? Yeah. Good. So this next slide, I want to share with you some of the competitive activity and market share. So if you look down this column here, again, I'll go through this. So hopefully most of you can see that. I'm going to pick out some of the key ones to talk to you about. But they are effectively 9 market sectors, or relevant market sectors, or RMS, as it's commonly referred to. Okay, so I'll go through a couple of those to give you an update. So LV demand connections with only LV work. We've seen a decrease in Northern Powergrid share, continually in this market sector, or relevant market sector. Now at 62%. So Northern Powergrid carry out 62% of all work with ICPs obviously contracting the other 38%. LV or HV demand connections with HV work, that is predominantly your housing estates where you require a substation to connect it. That is the vast majority of ICP work that we've always done and still continue to do. That is our most busy or active relevant market segment, and we actually only have retained 17% market share in that area. Okay, so the other half of that market share is all ICP work. So Northern Powergrid are only carrying out 17% of that. And like I said, I'm going to go into this with a little bit more detail on the next slide, but that is our most active area for competition connections. LV or HV demand connections with EHV work. Now that's saying 100% at the moment. These figures are year to date, Q1 2017. Okay, so all that effectively means, although it says 100%, all that means is that we've not had an acceptance of an EHV quotation within this first 3 months. Okay, and given that your quotation period is 3 months for an EHV connection, I'd expect that to be around about that. Okay, as soon as we have an acceptance, that could drop down to 60 or 70% because of the limited number of connections that we actually do in that world and the amount of time it takes to do. So I do expect that to decrease. DGLV connections is another area where we've lost market share. We're seeing obviously more housing sites with renewable energy being connected, so they would fall into that category. So we're seeing again a loss of market share in that area. The last one is unmetered local authority connections. Now that, if I rewind the clock probably 3 or 4 years ago, was 95% market share. We're now at 23. That has been a significant area which I seem to have spent a lot of time on, and a number in the room do this on a day-to-day basis now. The local authority connections, so I'm talking street lighting connections for local authorities, where Northern Powergrid historically would have done the majority of that work. We're seeing most, if not all, local authorities now contracting with ICPs rather than Northern Powergrid to carry out that work. And like I say, I know a number of you in the room are really active in that area. So before I move on, I'll take any questions. The chart there effectively shows that for half, or just short of half, of the connections work that we carry out as a business, ICPs are doing half of that work. Okay? So that's an average of all those relevant market segments. So effectively, you're doing half the work, we're doing half the work, and we expect that to continue to grow to the point where you're doing more work with us. Okay? Any questions on that? It's quite an interesting slide. No? Okay. So, this next slide is around the competitive activity in the unregulated RMS. And when I say unregulated RMS, it's actually the one that I talked about there, where we've only got 17% of that market share. That's because we passed the competition test in 2012, this market segment, which means effectively, if we wanted to, we could charge an unregulated margin. Okay, we don't. Sorry, it is an unregulated margin, but we've not increased that margin. It's still set at 4%, like all of the other market sectors. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about this one today, because this market sector alone, like I said, it's the busiest market sector, but it's worth just over £110 million in terms of contracted connections each year, so a significant amount of money and significant activity in this area. So I want to share some of the key volumes with you. So in 2016-17, we have issued 2,316 SLC 15 quotations in this RMS. If we look at that compared to last year, that's 1,199 more than the previous year, an increase of 107%. So real step change in activity in that area, and this already was our busiest market sector. In terms of ICPs applying for quotations, Jeff mentioned a number of 62 active ICPs, just so I can explain the difference between 67 and 62 is that we have 62 active ICPs, and when I say active ICPs, that's ICPs who hold an adoption or network access agreement with Northern Powergrid, who are actually physically active in our area. There are other ICPs who don't, who might just apply for a quotation because they're trying to win some work in our area, but they're not actually registered with us to work as yet. Okay? So 67 ICPs applied for quotations in this market segment in 2016-17, and that's 20 more than the previous year, an increase of 39%. So again, not only are we seeing more increase in terms of quotations being requested, we're actually seeing more and more ICPs come into this marketplace. I've shared some graphs figures again there. I'll give you a little bit of detail for those who can't quite see them, but if we rewind the clock to the competition test days back in 2012, 259 quotations issued for this market sector, compared to 2016-17 where we've got 2,316. Okay, so a significant increase again. And in terms of the number of ICPs requesting quotations, back in 2010-11, it was 20 ICPs, now up to 67. Okay, so again, the graphs just demonstrate that increase we've seen in this RMS, which, like I said to you, is worth a significant amount. Any questions on that? Again, quite a detailed slide, but thought we'd share it.
Do you know how many of the ICPs operate another Dino license areas as a comparison? Is that data available or not? Is that something
No.
not to get?
In the, if I'm right, in the SLC 52 report, there is as part of the working group, someone did a table last year, which was a bit of a comparison in terms of number of competitive ICPs. So I think we can start, as we see the second year report coming out this year, we can start looking at those figures. But from what I've seen compared to that last year, I think we are higher average. So there are other DNOs out there who have more active ICPs, but there are some who have significantly less. So I think we're middle of the pack towards the top, especially now we're up to nearly 70 active ICPs. We've certainly progressed since last year. So it'll be interesting to see those figures when they do come out. Anything else? Okay. So the next slide is around ICE, or Incentive on Connections Engagement. I want to share this slide with you really just to give you an update in terms of what we did last year, what we've got planned for this year, and hopefully take any questions that you've got on any of those actions that we did deliver, and some of the actions that we are going to deliver in 2017-18. So what is ICE, or Incentive on Connections Engagement? It basically drives the DNO to continually improve its services to major connections customers. Okay, so this is a license requirement on Northern Powergrid now, with a penalty if we don't meet the requirements. Each year we produce a detailed work plan of the connection service improvement actions, and we publish these plans along with our connection stakeholders and customers, and all actions are based on your feedback and ideas. Okay, so the ICEs are basically around, we ask you what you want us to do to improve our service offerings to you and the way we run our business. We consider those requests and we put them in a plan, we publish those plans, and then we have to meet the actions in certain timescales and deliver them. And then again, we ask you for your feedback in terms of, you told us this is what we did, how does it meet? And then we have to submit that to Ofgem for review and approval. So how do we do that? We do that via various different channels of engagement. We do that via the stakeholder panel, the connections customer forums. Today, this is exactly what this is, a customer forum. We also have the equivalent ones for our Section 16 customers, and then we also do it via monthly connections, monthly customer ICP surges. So a number of you in this room attend those surges. They are well attended, and we continue to see good feedback from them. That's where we get down to the nitty-gritty of some of the projects and the processes, and where we can develop some of these actions for the plan. Obviously, inquiries via our connections call centre, stakeholder newsletters, stakeholder consultations, market research, face-to-face discussions in the field, and via our Ask the Expert page on our website. So that's the fire alarm. I'm panicking, good. Okay, any questions on those engagements? So, example of that, you said, could we do a demo data report on to go through the POC self-determination? Okay. Someone said to us, some of our ICPs have done that, it'd be great if Northern Powergrid could do that as well. So we took that on board. Sorry, jumping ahead. Hopefully that'll be the last one. So we held 2 ICP self-determination sessions in Wetherby in Q1 2017. Is it March, February? Time flies. Yeah. So again, I think a number of you in this room attended those, though. They were basically about, we did 2 days. We did a standard design rule, so matrix designs, where you can self-assess. Or we did, then the following day was a technical. So anything above 60 kilowatts was into technical self-assessment. So like I said, we held 2 sessions on that. So that's kind of an example of feedback direct from ICPs where we've listened, we've taken that on board, and we've put them in our ICE plans and we've delivered them. So in 2016-17, as well as that one I just spoke about, I just want to run through some of the things that we did do. The first one is that we implemented a new process so ICP gets re-quotes or revalidations quicker. Just going to keep doing that throughout this presentation, I know it. So yeah, this was about where an ICP has been issued with a quotation. This is quite common, especially in the housing market. We will issue a quotation to an ICP. They may not be in a position to accept that quote, or they haven't won the site, for example. Our quotation validity period is currently 90 days. So if that 90-day period is due to elapse, the ICP will ask us for a revalidation. Where the financials haven't changed, so we haven't had a price increase, and our network remains the same. Technically, we've implemented a new process there where we will try and outperform the SLC 15 standard for it, so we won't necessarily apply the full 50 or 60 days again. We actually allocate an internal standard which is much quicker, which the designers try and work to, where we're just effectively reauthorising or revalidating the quotation. Okay? Questions on that? Run apart from the reinforcement trial. This was a bit of a long action in terms of the timescale, where we interacted with 4 different ICPs to try and run a part from the reinforcement trial. This is something that other DNOs had tried to do, and we tried to do the same. We set the scope out for that, and we worked with 4 ICPs to do that. We came up with a process, quite complicated in terms of charging, and technically in terms of what the scope of the reinforcement would involve. We didn't actually have an ICP come forward. Out of those, one forward with a valid scheme that fit the criteria of the trial. So what we then did is we opened it up to all ICPs. We amended our connection offers. Wherever there was a suitable scheme, we would tell you that this reinforcement could potentially be done. But to date, we've not actually had any suitable projects or an ICP come forward to do that. But the point there is that whenever we do identify that moving forward, we're happy to talk to you and look at trialling that with an ICP, and that's something that we want to get whenever we can. Run a self-determination POC workshop. I've already explained that to you. It was in the previous slide. Like I said, we did 2 of those in February or March of this year. Before that, we also ran a bit of a pre-runner to those self-determination workshops, because where you're self-determining, you need access to our records. Okay, and we had feedback again from ICP saying, how do I access your records? I've got issues. We run 2 different systems, Yorkshire North East. What's the difference between those? So we invited you all in. We had a session at Castleford with Matt and Alwyn and other people. We're going to talk to us a little bit more about records later on today. But we went through basically, how do you access Northern Powergrid's records? What do I need to do to get online? And that session was really good. We had a really good attendance for it, and it actually flushed out an issue that I'd been scratching my head about, a number of ICPs had, in terms of they were having issues in terms of the access that they had got, and they weren't able to access some of the technical information. And what it actually turned out is that effectively they were using safe dig access rather than live access to our records. Okay, so when we went through and gave a demonstration in terms of live access, this is how you access it. The penny finally dropped between us and the ICP, and that means we were able to move forward with that. And again, we had some great feedback from that self-determination workshops and those access to records workshops. So those were really worthwhile, so thank you for those people who did attend those. We also ran an ICP metered service disconnections pilot with an ICP that's in the room today. It was just one ICP that we trialled that with, and this is LV single-phase or 3-phase service disconnections. Okay, so we had a customer tell us, why can't an ICP on a greenfield housing site, for example, disconnect the properties and then reservice them? Because at the moment we have to apply to Northern Powergrid to disconnect them, and then but the ICP can do the new connections. Why can't we do the disconnections? And we said, okay, that's non-contestable, but we'll sit down, we'll have a look at it. And we developed a process and we trialled it with the ICP. To be honest, the physical work is relatively straightforward in terms of service disconnections. The hardest part was around the MPAN, because these are metered services, so you need to make sure that the MPAN and the metering and everything else has been disconnected. So we had to develop a process to do that. We did that, and we had a successful trial, and that now is business as usual. So still non-contestable, but it's an area where we're extending contestability. So should we have enough appetite from ICPs to do that? You can do it, it's business as usual, and if that market takes off, then we'll look at approaching Ofgem in terms of making that fully contestable.
That's the whole current services only.
Yes, it is, yes. All current LV metered services only. And that might change, but initially the scope of it is just service disconnections, because that's where the area where we thought was most appetite, and that's the feedback we got. And the last one there was revise our design approval process, and myself and Mike and Derek spent a lot of time on this one in terms of, we had some direct feedback from one of these events from an ICP that said, your design approval process is a bit clinical, is there nothing else we can do to improve this? He actually provided some best practice from other DNOs, which we gathered in, and we actually used some of that best practice. So we've completely changed our design approval process. Hopefully a lot of you should have seen that. Now in terms of the appendix that you're issued with, we actually approve individual elements of a connection, which effectively allows you to start work on some of the elements rather than Northern Powergrid saying, sorry, you've got your substation civil's wrong and we reject the full application. We'll actually approve individual elements of these now, which effectively allows you to commence with some of the contestable works while you then resubmit your design for our approval for some of the parts where you've maybe got something wrong and we need to re-approve it. Okay? So we've had, again, with the ICP that works with that has given us some great feedback in terms of how we've done that. That is a continuing feast, let's say, so we're always looking to improve that and tweak it whenever possible. But hopefully some of you have seen some benefits of that already. Any questions on those? No? Okay, so that was last year. So let's have a look at what we've got in the plan for 2017-18. So we got asked, can you publish the average time to issue design approval for? I don't know how long that takes, Northern Powergrid. Can you publish that for us? Now, I do actually share these informations in these seminars. I do, like I've just done, I give you the average time to quote, but someone wants to see that on the website so they can just access it. Now, we do have a page which is called average timescales and average prices. There's an uncontestable tab on there that we publish, which is updated every month. But we don't. That just covers POC quotations. It didn't cover design approvals. So the action on there is to basically update that part of our website to provide an average timescale for design approval requests. So we'll be doing that by the end of this month. That's one action. The next action was to develop and publish an end-to-end process diagrams, and we've actually got copies on your seats there, so please take those away. What I'd love you to do, if you could please, is pick them to pieces for me, because I've got an action to publish these by the end of June, so I'd love your feedback on these in terms of everything I've got wrong. Even if it's a spelling mistake, I'm happy to receive that back, or anything that you think that I've not got right in terms of actual work. But there's a significant amount of work gone into those, and they're actually interactive as well, so it's now published on our website, and I can't see it there, but I've provided a link on this presentation, and we'll issue it out via communication to you all shortly as well. But they're actually interactive, so at any point you can open up these documents and you can click. So for example, if you need to submit a daily whereabouts, you can click, there's an icon inside of the step in the process flow diagram where it will load our whereabouts form for you. So if you haven't got a copy, it takes you straight to it. Same for a POC application or for a connection call-off request. So not only does it follow the process through, whenever you need the documentation, click the link. Okay? It also has a link to email addresses for submitting as late or direct to my team for any queries you might have and things like that. So please have a play with them and give you some feedback on them before the end of June if you could, so I can get them right before we publish them properly. So any questions on that process diagram? No? The next one was to develop and publish a schedule of input services. Now this is something that we see growing. Again, Michael, myself, Jeff and others are planning to do quite a bit of work in this area as we move through 2017. We do have a nice action on this for the end of July 17. So what we're planning to publish there is basically, as more and more work becomes contestable, there are more and more ICPs out there who potentially still can't carry out some of those works. I'll give you an example. LV Self-Connect. So the number of you in the room, we're now fully authorised, set up to self-connect to LV. But also a number in the room who still require Northern Powergrid to carry out that fully contestable service for you. Okay? But instead of Northern Powergrid stepping back and saying, sorry, that's contestable, we only do non-contestable as a DNO, that's up to you to contract with another ICP or basically get yourselves in a position where you can carry out those. We're actually offering those services still to ICPs, and what we're going to do is publish a schedule of services effectively for those, so you can call them off as and when you need them. And that will get a little bit more in depth as we move that throughout 2017 with some other service offerings that we have planned. Okay, and I'll keep you obviously updated on them as we move through them. Any questions on that one? No? Okay, so the last one, and these are not all of them by the way, I've just picked out the key ones. So the next one is update our matrix design rules. This is Mr. Catlin. For those who attended the quick design rules sessions back in February and March this year, we made a commitment to update those design matrix rules to effectively, once and for all, include unmetered services. As I mentioned before, that unmetered marketplace has exploded over the last 2 or 3 years. The quick design rules that we had never really catered for unmetered. It was 1 to 4 domestic connections or up to 60 kVA for a commercial property. So As we've seen that self-service area explode, we're trying to react. We've done a lot of work with you direct in terms of working individual with ICPs collectively via the workshops to update those policies. So Mike's on with that, and I think, are you going to touch on some of that today? Yeah, so Michael gives an update in terms of that. Any questions on them then? Nope. Okay. Right, okay, so this next slide, adoption prerequisites, just a timely reminder to you all while I've got you in the room, I think, because I seem to be getting more and more involved in escalated issues in terms of where an ICP is self-connected or even we've connected, and there are certain prerequisites of adoption that haven't been met. Okay, so I just wanted to share some of these with you as a timely reminder. Back to the point that Jeff made earlier, in terms of all we want to do here is adopt quality assets for you and make sure that everything's in place, not only technically, but commercially as well. Okay? So that says before any connection and adoption of newly constructed contestable assets, the following prerequisites must be in place before the connection is made. And the last point is, this includes self-connect as well. It's probably more important for self-connect because you guys are actually doing the connection yourself. We're not in control of it. Okay? So it's really important that you ensure that all the prerequisites have been met before you're planning to self-connect. Now, hopefully we'll be monitoring that and we'll be saying to you, thank you for your connection call-off request, you're self-connecting, understand that, but by the way, X, Y and Z are still outstanding. Please note these must be in place, okay? And you might have seen some of the improvements we're trying to make in this area. When you submit a call-off request to us now, you actually get a checklist, and we send that to the project engineer and to the ICP requesting the call-off with all these prerequisites that says, these are outstanding still. These must be chased, these must be in place before the connection, okay? So expect to see more challenges in this area moving forward. So what are they? Wailings and easements, we all know about them. Legals, must be in place. Cable easements, substations, cannot connect without those. Really important, those must be in place prior to energisation. Hopefully you're all fully aware of that and familiar with that. Okay? Adoption agreements. We have a framework adoption agreement which an ICP must enter into. You enter into that once, it's valid for 5 years. Every site that you connect or require Northern Powergrid to adopt those contestable assets off, we issue you with a site-specific adoption agreement. And there are various schedules to that. All those schedules in that agreement must be in place prior to connection or adoption. Okay? Connection agreement or bilateral connection agreement. For an IDNO site, we call it a bilateral connection agreement. Every single IDNO connection that we connect must have a bilateral connection agreement in place. That sets out the terms of that connection to Northern Powergrid's network, the interfaces, the operational procedures between Northern Powergrid and an IDNO. A connection agreement is for an ICP or for an end user, actually it wouldn't be between the ICP and the end user and Northern Powergrid. So where you're building contestable assets for the customer, it's between that end customer and Northern Powergrid. Anything over 100 kilowatts, where you've got connected anything over 100 kilowatts, the end user will have to come into a connection agreement with Northern Powergrid. So again, same as a BCA, needs to be in place prior to connection. Okay?
Joe, it's 60.
It's just changed to 60.
Apologies.
The connection agreement for anything we adopt, anything that is CT metering now requires a connection agreement.
Right.
All current metering is the only stuff that doesn't need a connection agreement.
Right.
It's just changed.
Okay, I'll speak to you about that later because we need to publish that, share things update and communication on that. Thank you. Picking up on that.
That's not our rules, that's
Yes.
national rules.
Yeah. Okay, good. Diversionary work. So where there are non-contestable diversionary works, the Northern Powergrid have to complete to allow the connection to be, to allow the site to be connected. So site entrances on a housing estate where you need to divert assets around the site entrance. Those must be in place prior to the site being connected. Okay? Reinforcement is exactly the same scenario where we have to do non-contestable reinforcement works. Those must be in place before you connect. Simple rules. Okay? Outstanding non-conformances. We've got Alison and Simon with us today. They're going to give us a presentation on QA and how ICPs are faring in terms of the quality of assets and the inspections that we do, along with some examples of some common issues that we want to share with you today. So where you receive a non-conformance from Alison and the team, you need to make sure that that non-conformance has been rectified and Northern Powergrid have been notified that that non-conformance has been. So wrong tile tape, shallow cable, all must be rectified prior to connection, okay? And we'll be challenging you more and more to make sure that you've notified Northern Powergrid, Alison's team and the project engineer that those have been rectified, okay? If they're not rectified, then we might be into the case where we're asking you to do trials after it's connected, inconvenience your customer and more expensive use an ICP, so it's really important that they're fully closed out before the connection is made. CT commissioning results. We've got Kevin Little with us today, delivery manager, who's going to give us a presentation on this. This is a really important area again in terms of an obligation on Northern Powergrid to gather this information. Where we're doing the connection, we can control it in terms of not connecting these without these CT commission results. Where you're an ICP doing this work, you must be providing us that information because you're doing the commissioning, okay? And we need that information to pass on to meet our requirement. Finally, as laid drawings, again a big one. We're spending more and more time in terms of escalating issues with ICPs where days, weeks, even months in some cases, we've not received the as-laid drawings for a connection that's been energised and adopted by Northern Powergrid. Now we need to get much better at saying, sorry, we're not connecting until the as-lays are received, okay? But there is also, it's an obligation on you in terms of making sure that you provide those as-laid drawings prior to connection. For unmetered, because it's high volume, repeat, small scale work, we're happy to receive them up to 48 hours after the connection's made or the scheme's finished if you're doing a 100 lamp unmetered scheme, okay? Everybody clear on that? And in terms of as laid drawing, we've got Matt and Olwen with us today. They're going to do a presentation later on about the typical things that we're seeing in terms of poor quality records, and hopefully give you some guidance as well. We've actually published a guidance document now to help you in terms of what we expect, and because, like I said, I've been involved in a lot of challenges with ICPs in terms of, well, you don't tell us what you want, so how can we know what you want unless you tell us? So we've done just that, this and again, and we published a guidance document now. And I think, Olwen, is that covered in your slides? It is. It's great, so we'll give you a bit more detail around that. So, like I said, these are not nice to have, these are requirements, these are obligations on you and on Northern Powergrid. So I just want to quickly share with you where these obligations sit. So, Northern Powergrid's adoption agreement, spoke about that. Every active ICP has to sign an adoption agreement. Within our adoption agreement, it says, assets will be connected to the distribution system by the distribution only if the distribution receives a completion handover and adoption certificate. That's the schedule to the adoption agreement, okay? Hopefully, all of you should be familiar with that in the room, okay? If you're not, come and see me, let's talk about it, I'll make sure you are familiar with it all, okay? Common practice. The distributor has obtained any required consent. We talked about that before, it's straightforward, we must have the consent in place. We're not going to be connecting any assets that we don't have the relevant consents or rights to be there. As laid drawings, spoke about that again, that's where the obligation sits in terms of the adoption agreement. And then finally receiving the required plant test results and the commission test results. Just what I talked about again, and like I said, Kevin's going to give us an overview of what those commission test results are later today. So that's in the adoption agreement. What's it say in the code of practice? Because there are also obligations in there. Okay. Now, interestingly, it's nice to see, I suppose, rather than all obligations on Northern Powergrid in this code of practice, there are obligations on ICPs. Okay. So if you haven't seen it, have a look. I've provided the relevant section for you there, 7.4.2. So the ICP will provide the DNO all as-laid drawings and test certificates as specified by the DNO. And that's what we're specifying in our adoption agreement, okay? So we expect, not only is the obligation within our adoption agreement, it's also on you in the code of practice. And then what the code of practice actually goes on to say is that failure to provide the correct information, the timescale required will result in a referral to the NERS accreditation body, okay? Now, so far, since the introduction of this code of practice, we've not had to do that. Like I said, I've been involved in some escalated events where we had to very quickly ask the ICP to get the records. So far, I think we've nearly got all of them all in. I think we're getting there just about. So today, like I said, we want to give you a timely reminder in terms of how important this is, what your obligations are. The fact that we've actually got an obligation there in the code of practice that when you're not doing it, we must be telling theirs. Okay? Any questions on that? Because that is quite an important, powerful slide. So. Everybody clear? Good? Great. I might sleep a bit better at night if we start doing all this properly. Right, so in summary, and this is me finished then, we continue to support and adhere to the Competition Connections Code of Practice and openly promote competition and connection. ICP activity across our DSAs, and DSAs is distribution service areas, because we have two in Yorkshire and North East, has significantly increased, and I demonstrated that in those slides. Our quotation design approval timescales continue to surpass that with minimum SLC 15. We talked about the average times, quotations, etc. And we continue to work with ICPs where there's an appetite to do so to extend contestability. So the things I talked about, like the disconnections, the unmetered overhead trial that Paul today is going to give us a presentation on later. Adoption prerequisites, like I said, are an obligation on you and on us. They're not a nice to have. And we need you to continue to tell us how we can amend our services and processes, and we will consider those as part of our ongoing stakeholder engagement. We will listen to you and put those actions into our plan where we feel they're appropriate to do so, listen to any best practice, and we'll shape our services and offerings hopefully to improve those that we offer to you. And that's me done. So, any questions on that before I hand over to Mike? No? Okay, great. Thanks.